Good evening. Welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Jefferson County Board of Education on Monday, November 14th, 2022. If you'd please join us for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And before we start our meeting this evening, if you would please just join me for a moment of silence in memory of Mr. Jim Lawson, a teacher at Harpers Ferry Middle School that we lost this week. Thank you. Next, we have the Deputy Superintendent for Instructional Support update, Mr. Banks.
Good evening. One of our strategies in the Department of Instruction to improve math achievement is number talks. We have provided extensive professional development throughout the county, and we want to introduce you or maybe reintroduce you to how this all works. Tonight and also in future meetings, we're going to begin to bring you some of our experts, our teachers, our coaches, our interventionists, all those folks who are really involved with teaching our children to share their expertise with you. Tonight, we're going to share that information again on number talks, and we have two elementary teachers with us tonight. First is Kelsey Fellers, who's a grade 1 teacher at Page Jackson, and secondly, Jean Harmon, who teaches grade 4 at North Jefferson. I just want to thank you both for giving up your personal time to be here tonight and share how you're helping our students with math. So I'll turn it over to you guys.
Good evening. I'm used to a teacher voice, so if it gets loud, you'll have to warn me. I'm really sorry. I'm not good with the mic thing. So I wanted to start out by I have a short PowerPoint, but I really want to convey to you the importance of the concept of kids talking about math. You know, we oftentimes get out our pencil and paper and we write it down and then we figure out the answer, but how did you do it? Well, if you can't say how you did it, then when you get to the professions that like education, you often don't realize how you did it. So I am a daughter of a teacher, and my father, I always say beat it into me. He didn't literally. He drove from school. It was 2 miles from my house to where he taught, and he would, whatever strategy we were on, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, he would quiz me from when we left the house to when we got to school, from when we got to school back to the house. So I learned it by rote. Then when I got into the classroom and started teaching, I realized I didn't know what I was doing. So I invite you to start by thinking about how you learned about math. Did you memorize it? Did you write your multiplication 10 times each? Because that was me. Did you have to touch it? You know, I watch my kids on a daily basis look at a math problem and they go, oh, if I move this, so we need to give the kids the manipulatives. But we need them to look at math as a process, as a step. So I would like for you to think, what kind of a learner are you? Can you mental math a problem if we give it to you? Why are numbers so important to you? And why are they important to us? You know, we do budgets as school systems. We do budgets as wives and mothers. We do budgets as so many people in so many different jobs. But at the end of the day, if we don't understand how we get to that bottom line, then what have we done? What have we done for our students? So The students that I received this year, I at first was like, oh, they have no place value. But what I realized was it wasn't that they didn't have place value. And Number Talks talks about that. If we can go to we're actually going to, we went through this, sorry. It's my fault. I'm not used to not clicking myself, you know. Okay, so I'm going to let her talk about the hand signals, and then we will give you guys some mental math problems. We're going to quiz you a little bit.
Okay, it's been a while since I've used a microphone, so bear with me. So what I do in my class, and I believe everyone does it, is when we do these signals, we put them on our chest so it's not to distract other people. When I first started, I was like, show me the signals, and then they were so crazy about it. So then Miss Mary Lynn was like, we keep them on our chest, and I love that. So this is, you see a problem, and this is, I'm thinking. So I'm like, okay, I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, I know, or Miss Fellers, I'm with you, but I'm thinking. This one is, I have a strategy, I have an answer, and I'm ready to give it if you were to call on me. This is, I have two, and I always do it kind of funny, like I got two strategies. They like, my first graders like that. This is, I have more than one, or I have two, but at least more than one. And then once a strategy is given, if you see cards and you see 4 dots and another 4 dots, and they can show me, Miss Fellers, that is 8. I know my doubles, and we agree, we go like this. And I will do a little joke. When I first did that, we agree like this, and I was like, wait, I think that's hang 10. It's this way, not this way. So I quickly fixed that. It's this way. But those are our Number Talk hand signals, yes.
Do you want me to hold them? I'm going to hold
that. So do like, I want to do, we just did this one. Perfect. Okay. So what I do in my class, actually, can I just talk like this? Is that okay? Or do you want me to have the microphone?
You need the microphone
Okay,
for
sorry.
Zoom to pick it up.
So I
Sorry.
think I'll just hold it. That's okay. So then what I do is I hold it up and I say, my question is, how many dots do you see? And they tell me. And then I say, how do you see them? And they let me know. So hold this up. Actually, will you hold that up for me? Yep. Yeah. So this is one that we did today, and I showed them this, and they have to figure out how many dots total. And they would look at it, and some would, show me the symbols, the signals and stuff, and one would go, well, I know that's 8, and 8 plus 2 is 10, so there's a total of 10 dots. Some would also say, well, I know that's 5, 5 plus 3 is 8, add the 2 more dots to that, that's a total of 10 dots. And then some could even, and this is what I love, would be able to see there's 2 spaces out, and I know that's a 10 frame. So if 2 more goes in, that's 10, and here's your 2, so that's 10. And they will show me, they will say, if you take these and move them here, like they will even sometimes want to come up and like move them with their finger. It's awesome. And so that's one of the ones we did today. So they have to tell me how many dots they see and then also how they see them. They can't just say 10. I need to know how you see 10 and explain their reasoning. So that's for first grade. Thank you.
So I, of course, have 4th grade this year. And so if I can have my slide back, sorry, type A, slides, organization. To the slide with the pictures and the can you, it should be like slide 3. And can I have the first problem? Oh, there we go. Okay, so you'll notice it is written horizontally. There is a purpose behind that. We want kids to see numbers as numbers. We don't want kids to see numbers as a problem and how do I get to the bottom line. So what we noticed when we started this, I've been doing it for a while, but as a county, we started it about a month ago. But what we noticed in our meetings was that the kids were moving the numbers and didn't realize where the place value belonged. So when you write them horizontally, they're able to see a number. So if you could glance up there and see 119 plus 26, can you please show me when you have an answer? I see a couple. So can somebody please tell me the answer that they got?
145.
145. Okay, so how did you do it? And this is the part where we dictate what the kids say to us. So if they say, I did this, we write it. And even if it's not right, you write it because then they catch themselves. And that is the learning step. The learning step is, and I teach in my classroom, in order to correct a mistake, you have to make the mistake. If you don't know what mistake you're making, you can't fix it. So if you don't fall, you can't get hurt. If you don't get hurt, you can't learn from it. So can one of you tell me how you got 145?
I added 120 plus 25.
So you subtracted 26 minus 1 and added that 1 to 119 and then did 120 plus 25 to get 145. That is the most common answer. I had a child, though, that took 4 minus 119, so 119 minus 4, and added the 4 to the 26 to get 30, and then 115 plus 30 is 145. The point is, they got the same answer, and that's what we encourage them. We encourage them to get the same answer. If you could go ahead and advance, I'm not going to give you all 4, but when you see all 4, you'll see that there's a pattern, because we want them to start noticing friendly numbers, like tens numbers and fives numbers. But if you could glance at the last one, 124 plus 26. This one, when I gave it to the children, one of my little girls, who has grown so much, she looked at that and she goes, "It's 225. And I'm like, and then she turned to me, and I always have them discuss their answer with the neighbor. And her neighbor was like, "Where'd you get the extra 100? What she had done was, when she was moving her numbers around, she had moved the 2 instead of the 1. But she caught herself, and she said, "Mrs. Harmon, I got it. I figured out my mistake." She said, "And I won't do it again." She said, "Because that is 100, not in the tens." So I think that it is important that we realize that in order for these kids to be better at math, we have to give them opportunities. So I want to end with the next slide, please. So student growth. What is it? It's about getting kids excited. So we've been doing this a month. Halloween, I taught a lesson in science about melting candy corn. I was so proud of my kids, so I got evaluated. Not a plan, but they showed up. We accepted. And the administrator who evaluated me said, "Did you hear that conversation at table 3? And I said, "Yes." And she goes, "It was a math conversation." And I said, "It was." Their conversation was, "Well, the molecules filled the tens frame, which caused an overflow, and that's why it melted faster in this one than in that one." And she goes, "How did you do it?" And I said, "I've taught number talks since day 1. So, but that's what we want. We want life learners. And in order to be life learners, we have to realize that math and science, they go together, just as much as history and English. So, so that's how it helps. That's where it works. It works everywhere. And the last one is, why will it help our students? Because of the lifelong learners things. I know that sounds like the point that we're driving home, but the reality is, if these kids don't start making those connections to math and science, they see science as a fun experiment, but they don't realize how it applies in their kitchen when they've got a clog and they have to add baking soda and vinegar to try to get it to go through, which we've done that as well. So I just want to lead it to you and see if you have any questions or anything else to add.
I think we're just relieved that we passed the "Are you as smart as a 4th grader?" getting the number problem right.
Well, I will just share real quick. This is the K-5 Mental Math and Computations book. So this is where they came from. But when I taught 5th grade, this is a fractions, decimals, and percentage, and I learned that I am not smarter than a 5th grader. Most of the time, I had to figure it out before I could teach it. But the kids always like to see that, "Oh gosh, I don't know" face. So. My kids love it. It's the first thing we do in the morning, and they're like, "Is it number talks time?" Like, before I even get the slide up there, they know, because I do the slide just like you guys saw it, on a plain background, though, because we want them to focus on the numbers they see.
Nice.
So.
Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Mr. Banks, we may need to rope Ms. Harmon into also becoming a bus driver so that on the way to school, she can teach the kids, on that little window to talk math. Thank you. Next, we have the approval of minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the regular board meeting held October 24th, 2022? Thank you, Mr. Osborne. Is there a second? Thank you, Ms. Ogden. Any discussion or question?
I would like to have it amended to add that Dr. Joy and I were online and we could not vote.
It was in that. It
Yeah,
does
but
mention
it's
that.
in the, it's in one part, but it's not in the part from the,
If I remember correctly, it mentioned in the beginning that you were via Zoom, and then at the end it mentioned that due to technical difficulties, you were not able to
right,
fully
so it
participate.
says minutes. A motion was made by Mark Osborne, seconded by Lori Ogden, and carried to approve minutes for regular board meeting held October 10th, 2022. There, I would suggest that it would say that Dr. Joy and Carmen Bratton were online and there were technical difficulties and were not able to vote because we were not able to vote on that.
Okay. Mr. Osborne, would you mind amending your motion to include the additional statement that Dr. Joy and Mrs. Bratton were not able to vote?
I have no problem with that.
Ms. Ogden, do you mind seconding the amended motion?
Thank you.
You're welcome. All in favor of the amended motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Citizens' comments. The first up this evening is Bobby Block, followed by Tara Traeger. And just a reminder that all speakers are limited to 3 minutes. Speakers are prohibited from making negative or derogatory comments using a name or position by which an individual can be identified. Comments may not be threatening, profane, vulgar, or abusive, or the speaker will be required to cease his or her comments. And first up is Bobby Block via Zoom. Technology is great when it cooperates. Oh, there we go. Ms. Block, can you hear us? Is she muted, Mr. Johnson? Ms. Block, I see your screen, but I can't hear you. Mr. Johnson, can we go ahead and move to Tara Traeger? And if that one works, then maybe it's just Ms. Block's technical difficulties. Ms. Traeger, can you hear me? Oh. You're muted. I can't hear you.
Hello?
Try one more time.
Can you hear me?
Oh, now we can hear you. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, perfect. If you could just let me know when my 3 minutes starts. I'm not very good with Zoom.
Nope. Whenever you're ready, I'll start it as soon as you start.
Okay. My name's Tara, and I have a student at Jefferson High School. I knew the transition from middle school to high school would be an adjustment for us. I didn't know it would be troublesome. I figured it out 2 weeks before my son graduated 8th grade. I requested he be placed in the JROTC program. The application has an area for the student to fill out. It asks, why do you want to be a part of the JROTC program? To which my son's response was, to be honest, I don't, but my mom wants me to, so I will. I was contacted by the school counselor, who was filled with concern because, in her words, quote unquote, we don't make children do anything they don't want to do. To which I responded, that's why he has parents. If we let him make life choices at 13, he'd be in front of an Xbox 24/7 with a bag of Cheetos and an endless supply of soda. When she was not satisfied with my answer, she went out of her way to contact my son's dad to run the decision by him, despite the fact that I have sole legal custody. Thinking back to her statements, they're slightly ironic after one of your former staff members is now a convicted rapist. He did not have any issues making a student do something she couldn't consent to doing. The Board of Education has failed West Virginia students over and over, year after year. You've provided an environment for a rapist. You've dismissed parental rights and concerns. Are you there?
Oh, yes, go ahead.
You
Continue, please.
used and considered this rapist's words 3 months prior to his charge when he came before you and said, it doesn't matter your religion or your teachings at home. At some point, biology overtakes, the nature overcomes nurture. So the idea that if we strictly teach abstinence, things will get better is unequivocally false. This reminds me of another evil man, masked in intellect and theory, whom you have supported, Che Guevara, who went on to become a racist, homophobe, and mass murderer. Imagine my surprise and disgust finding out you've considered one rapist's words to influence the sexual health education of my son while glorifying a mass murderer. I think it's time you all are reminded that your job is that of a civil servant, your paycheck is written by the taxpayers, and that is who you should be answering to, not the other way around. Most importantly, my son loves JROTC and is doing well, because at the end of every day, I know my child better than a guidance counselor who has met him a handful of times. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, we have Richard Stack. I need you to use the microphone so that the Zoom picks it up, please.
continue on with what the previous speaker mentioned, tonight I also would like to revisit the county's activities during Hispanic Heritage Month. That month is set aside to commemorate the inestimable contribution of American Hispanics to this great nation. Millions, nay tens of millions of Hispanics have served to make this nation what it is, and they have left an indelible mark on our culture and our history. Incidentally, last week was Veterans Day, and I would remind you that there has not been a single war that our country has fought in where Hispanics have not fought and bled and died for us. And yet somehow this school system made the absolutely unfathomable decision to commemorate not the contribution of American Hispanics by mentioning perhaps Medal of Honor recipients, notable politicians, scientists, authors, world-class athletes, but rather an anti-American zealot and murderer who would have seen this nation destroyed. Miss Lala Mooney spoke eloquently last month in this very room about the horrors that she personally endured in Castro's prisons, where guards under the tutelage of Che Guevara and his minions raped, murdered, and tortured. And yet, given the outrageous decision by school authorities to honor Che Guevara, one would have thought, one would have hoped, that when faced with the truth, there would be an immediate and vocal recantation of what you had done, an admission of the horrendous mistake, a public promise that it will never happen again, and an announcement to the students that you, the school district, had made a mistake, explaining what a monster he was, that he was not an American, and that the school was wrong. Yet there has been silence, a deafening silence. One might also assume that the individual or individuals who made this decision were one of two things: blithely ignorant of what Che Guevara was, hard to believe because they found his name, and I checked, it was not listed on any list of great Hispanics, or, more scary, that they knew exactly who he was and were pushing him anyway in some odd attempt to indoctrinate children about the righteousness of Marxist revolutionaries. Either way, it was an egregious failure on the part of the school district and a failure in their duties. It is also a tragedy that one of the few times the students will hear his name was an announcement ostensibly about American Hispanics, a statement that was made without content or nuance. And finally, there is high irony here. We started this event with a Pledge of Allegiance, and
Mr.
yet...
Stack, I'm sorry, I need to ask you to stop, but thank you very much. We appreciate you being here. Next, we have Lala Mooney, followed by Aaron Paxson.
Hi, thank you so much for offering me the opportunity to talk one more time. We already covered the issue of Che Guevara, and just want to emphasize that Cuba had 125 missiles aimed at the United States, and he was a leader, but you already heard that. And I also want to emphasize another issue. When we discuss the issue of sexual abuse by a teacher, and the fact that this teacher had advocated in a public comment when the curriculum of the school was discussed. And I wanted to emphasize an issue not only of content, but of process, that we feel that the parents should be the ones that have the opportunity to listen to this kind of decision when we're dealing with sexual matters or matters of this sensitivity. So I wanted to emphasize the process, that maybe instead of having the teachers advocating the parents should be consulted, and that this is a right that God has given to the parents. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next is Erin Paxton.
Hello. My name is Erin Paxton, and I am here today to introduce you to myself and my amazing son, Braden, who had to go to the bathroom. I am a clinical social worker, and I have worked with children and adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities for almost 17 years. But nothing could have prepared me for what it is like to sit on the other side of that table than when my own child was born with special needs. Braden was born with epilepsy due to a tumor in his brain that caused him to have 30+ seizures a day. When he was 2, he had a brain surgery to remove his entire right frontal lobe to help reduce his seizures. This part of his brain impacts attention span, focus, mood regulation, impulse control. In the same way that you cannot ask a child in a wheelchair to go walk up and down the stairs, you cannot ask my son to control his impulses. Braden needs an adult in close proximity at all times to help him stay safe. Braden has been enrolled at TA Lowry for the last 2 years since he was in pre-K. He is now a first grader. I have been fighting to get his IEP education needs met the entire time. He has been out of school for the last 6 weeks because on October 6th, his teacher called me and she said that she should not know how to keep my son safe without the increased adult supervision that has been identified in his IEP. So for no fault of his own, my child is being denied his educational rights because Jefferson County cannot prioritize a staff to meet his educational and safety needs. I understand there is a staffing crisis in this country right now, and I recognize that this impacts far more children than my own. However, TA has been identified as having a program in this county, that supports children with disabilities. And therefore, I am here to beg you and this school to prioritize the staffing needs of this school. Not only are they putting my son in danger, but also the teachers, the staff, and the students. I have met with members of Jefferson County schools without resolution, and I do not want you to forget that real families, good people, and very bright children are being impacted by the decisions in this room. My son is not a number. He is a smart, kind, social child, and he deserves to be back in school. Please remember us and the students identified with disabilities in this county as you are making staffing decisions. I may be biased, but I like to think that his face is pretty unforgettable. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have the consent agenda. Ms. Loring, are there any changes to the consent agenda?
No, there's no changes this evening.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as is?
Make a motion.
Thank you, Ms. Bratton. Is there a second?
Second. Just a quick question.
Thank you, Ms. Ogden. Any question or discussion?
Yeah, just have a question on, remind me again what DEC stands for?
Those individuals have passed away.
Okay, I was thinking that that was what that was, so, okay. We just don't want to write that out.
Correct, yeah. We'd be a little sensitive to it, yes.
I have a question. I've requested a few times clarification on the number of positions that we have employed at the board office versus a chart that was provided by a citizen that shows almost twice as many board office positions. And it's been over a month now. I haven't gotten clarification. Is that possible to provide the positions, not just a number, but exactly what those positions are? Because when I look at the comparison and add these epic positions, it doesn't match. And so the document the citizen provided seems more probable, but I don't know. And it's concerning since we have less than half the number of students in this county, but it's probable that we have twice as many board office positions as Berkeley. So does that all make sense?
Well, right now, we have a motion on the floor for the consent agenda, on the
Right.
agenda this evening. And so,
And I'm just
Any other-
clarifying why I can't agree to this consent agenda.
okay. Any other questions or discussion about the consent agenda?
Yeah, I have one more. It has Kimberly Orr listed for Jefferson High School as an assistant, but I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Edwards is not the coach and she is the coach, so she might be the main coach and not the assistant coach. I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, on the last agenda, he retired.
He did. I don't have that in front of me as far as through that posting and search process who the finalist was. I
Yeah,
don't,
she's
I'm not
the
aware of
only-
that. So
She's the only one at swim, so
yeah.
I would assume she's the head coach, so I'm not quite sure how you want us to.
Yeah, it depends. I mean, if you want to, you can table it and pull that from the consent agenda this evening.
Well, I think she needs
but-
to be approved so we can actually have any kind of coach, but I
Yeah.
think we need to follow up on that, and then if you want to bring that back at the next board meeting and fix that, so she's amended, I don't care how we do it, but we can't not approve her to be anything, because we
Right.
don't have a coach.
Mhm. Yeah, I don't know who the head coach is, so I'd have to look that up.
Okay.
Was she the
Um,
assistant last year?
She was the assistant last year, yes.
Well, this is the renewal, so maybe that just hasn't happened yet where she's moved into head coach position.
Correct,
So-
and that's what I
okay.
need to check on, yeah.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor for the consent agenda, and as Ms. Ogden pointed out, I would like to just mention that there are 3 employees on there who are now deceased, and so we would just like to thank them for their time and service to Jefferson County.
Yes.
So all in favor of the consent agenda, say aye. Opposed?
Oppose?
Thank you. All right. Next, we have unfinished business. The request approval for the sound system for Jefferson High School and Washington High School football stadiums.
So for this, Mr. Johnson will be bringing Ms. Joyce White in on Zoom to present to you. As you know, we had a discussion with our local legislators who very generously pledged some funding to help support new sound systems at the stadium for both Washington High School and Jefferson High School. There's Ms. White, and she can give you both the numbers and the matching requirements that we had for those. So, Ms. White.
Good evening.
Good evening.
We have one bid for the high school stadium speakers, and that's from DSL Sound. And their bid amount is $68,740. And Dr. Gibson-Learn is correct, very generous donations from both Wayne Clark and Paul Espinoza of a combination of $30,000. We will be locally, locally making a match of that of $38,740. And we did find the funds to match, even though that was unbudgeted. So I just want to make the board aware that we do have the funds to match this particular project.
All right, thank you, Ms. White. Is there a motion to approve the sound systems for Jefferson High School and Washington High School football stadium through DSL Sound for $68,740?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Osborne. Is there a second?
I second it.
Thank you, Ms. Bratton. Any other questions or discussion?
I have a question. Was this the only vendor that offered a bid, or did it not go out for bid?
It did go out for bid, and I see, maybe that's Dr. Jennifer Rowan, she is in the room. She took us through the RFP process for this, and we had one person who made a bid, but if you'd like to expound upon that, Dr. Rowan is available to answer that question.
Good evening. Yes, we had 3 bidders that said they were going to complete the RFP process. However, only one followed through, and that was DSL. So yes, we have one bidder, and that's DSL. Thank you.
I just asked one more question. Can you tell me as well, is this just for speakers? This does not include a new board? This does not include, I know the concern originally, I remember stated from the coaches and whatnot, was that because there's so many different people who touch it, if we don't get something that you can dial in and set to where it can't be switched or whatnot, that still is going to blow a speaker or be a problem. Did we fix that part yet?
It's the whole speaker system, so there is going to be an element of change there, and DSL is going to provide that professional development for the people who are going to be using the board or the new elements of the speaker system. So yes, there will be a change in that area.
Is this a company that we've used before or a company that has experience before in that?
Actually, yes. Everything that you see here is DSL, I believe. Is that correct? Yes. We have used them here and in the old boardroom, so they have been used in the district before.
All right, thank you.
Thank
Any
you.
other questions? Hearing none, all in favor of approving DSL sound for $68,740 for the speaker system for both high school football stadiums, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Be nice not to hear Charlie Brown.
Thank you. Next, we have action to approve policy 3120.12, substitutes in area of critical need and shortage.
At the last meeting, the board voted to place the policy on substitutes in areas of critical need and shortage on public comment. That was put out for public comment for the period that was required, and we did not receive any comments on this policy. Therefore, we ask that the annual renewal and review of this policy be approved for adoption.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve policy 3120.12, substitutes in area of critical need and shortage?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Ogden. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Osborne. Any questions or discussion?
Yeah, I have one. I don't know how easy it is to do, but I think it's important that the public is aware that employees or people applying for these positions that are certified, they need to know that retired people can't trump them. I know that it says so in the document, but the way that I got hired in Jefferson County was because I fought over a retiree that was allowed to come back. So I know that it happens. So I just want the public to be aware that the people that are retired don't have priority if you have a certified applicant. Thank you.
I haven't seen that, but okay, thank you.
All right. All in favor of the motion of approving policy 3120.12, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you, Mrs. Lauren. Next, we have new business, review and possible action on Shepherdstown Elementary infrastructure. That sounds exciting.
Thank you. So for this, once again, I will be joined by a couple of my colleagues via Zoom. Everyone should have in front of them a document that says site utility comparison. From our architects and engineers, we will be joined by Mr. Randy Jones, our chief architect, and Mr. Bill Shelton, our chief engineer, as well as Ms. Joyce White, our deputy superintendent for operations. Some of this information you have seen previously. Some of it is clarification of former information. Essentially, as we had previously, Shepherdstown Elementary has two options for us to obtain water and sewer service on that site. Those two options are for us to either utilize the municipal public water and sewer system, or for us to install our own on-site water and sewer system. In discussion with the Corporation of Shepherdstown, some things that have come to light that may have a bearing on this decision have been around the responsibility for both the installation, the oversight, the ownership, and the legal process of installing that water and sewer line. So I think probably the easiest way to walk through this, the simplest way, all of the details are on all of these pages, but if you go to the very back, I did a very, very simplistic pro-con sheet on both the on-site water and sewage treatment and the municipal water and sewage treatment. So the largest differences between these two, the municipal water and sewage treatment is a project in which we will do the engineering for that project. We will hire the organization and oversight for that project. We will purchase the materials for that project. We will be responsible for all of the installation. We will be responsible for obtaining all of the easements between our property and the existing line in Shepherdstown. There are currently 20 pieces of property with 17 owners from whom we will have to get permission to go across their land. Should we be unable to do that, we will either have to go across the street, go around them to another piece of property from someone that we do get permission for, or to enact a legal process to have them, to require them to allow us to go across their land. So in terms of the pros for the municipal water and sewage treatment system, number one, that is a long-term solution. Once we complete that process, we hand it over to the Corporation of Shepherdstown, and we're done. They are responsible for it after that. So it will have the benefit of having reduced cost for future boards, because then any replacement or repairs will become their responsibility and not ours. In addition, that will be a significant amount of infrastructure for growth in Shepherdstown. In terms of the cons, it is about right now how things are trending, a little over $500,000 more than doing an on-site water and sewage treatment system. Now, on-site would have to be replaced at end of life at about 25 years. Another difference between the on-site and the municipal is that with the municipal, because we are going across other people's property and because our utilization of it is dependent on the Corporation of Shepherdstown approving it. So we do all of the work, we put in all of the money, we get to the end and we go to hook it up, and the Corporation of Shepherdstown says, yes, we'll take it, and then we sign everything over to them. The timeline for that depends on a lot of other people. And if we have some extensive difficulty with easements or with any of the construction of that, that could push the time frame beyond what we feel comfortable with. So for on-site water and sewer, we do have much greater control over the timetable for those. All that's required is for us to get a permit. It will require a staff person to meet the legal safety requirements, because we would then ongoing have to monitor the water and the sewer. However, we would have no disruption to Shepherdstown citizens in that process. So the reason that we bring this to you is really twofold. Right now, we are tracking all of the other projects in West Virginia, and many of them are coming in, quite frankly, several $1 million over projection. Just supply chain and costs and manpower. And so part of a large-scale building project like this is that in the beginning, it's all about the adults, right? There's this big pot of money, and every builder and every landowner and every company and every organization wants to stick their thumb in that pie and pull out a plum. And you sort of have to fight your way through each one of those issues as they come up. And part of what we are struggling with, and I want us to be super cognizant of in the beginning, is that at the end of this, in 3 years, there is going to be a group of kids. And by the time we get to the kids, if we're short $2 million, $3 million, they're the ones, right? Not these contractors up front, not the homeowners up front who are in disagreement with what we're trying to do, not the kids. That means, I'm sorry, we can't put an awning on here. I'm sorry, we can't afford this steam room. I'm sorry, can't do this. So some of this is really having hard discussions, and I'm sorry, oftentimes I try to solve all of these problems before they come up to you and just sort of like hand it to you in a nice little bow. And the reality is that this is a difficult decision to make. Long term, the bones of this place, all other things being equal, us using municipal water and sewer is the way to go, right? Long term, it solves many problems into the future and takes things off of future boards. In the shorter term, it could become much more time consuming and much more costly. And that's a decision that I need you to make going in eyes wide open. So I haven't seen on here, Jason, can I assume that you've moved Joyce and Randy and Bill over?
They're on the screen, Dr. Gibson.
Okay, great. There they are. Hello there, Ms. White. Hello, Mr. Jones.
Hello.
Hi.
So I think at this point I've just sort of laid out a very general, wide-ranging, and perhaps the board could ask questions of you who has a much more intimate involvement than I in the day-to-day about some nuance between these two potential decisions.
Are you asking for questions?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I have a couple questions. Were you aware of this initially when you purchased the property? Was this part of the plan that you would have these two choices?
Yes, ma'am.
And what was your initial plan? Did you decide you would wait till the time came, or did you feel like you were going to create your own sewage treatment, or what was?
That's a great question. All along, we had both of these choices, and the same caveats applied in that long term, we felt that municipal water and sewer, if we could afford them, was the better choice in terms of infrastructure. However, at that time, we still didn't have bids on the differences in the costs between these. We also had not anticipated, we went and spoke with the corporation of Shepherdstown, and Mr. Jones can speak to this a little bit more. In other infrastructure projects, the municipality itself has gone to the landowners and obtained all of the easements. In this case, the corporation of Shepherdstown has told us that they believe that's our responsibility to go and do. So the time and the perhaps legal costs of this or infrastructure costs of that will fall to us. This is not a case where we're going to give them the money and they're going to do the project. We are going to do every bit of it, and then at the end we're going to sign a piece of paper and say, here's a $2.1 million municipal project for the city of Charlottesville. Thank you very much. Use it wisely. However, we also you are going to take off of every board and superintendent and principal and child and parent in the future the responsibility for water and sewer for that site, because it's all going to fall on the Corporation of Shepherdstown once you hand it over.
I have another question. Are you
Absolutely.
aware that there is a chronic water concern in Shepherdstown? That it's often needs to be boiled, and now there is a development, and I don't know if that huge development, I think 64 homes, I don't know if that's going to be part of Shepherdstown Water. So I get the impression that they're already maxed out on their system, but I haven't inquired.
That's a great question. First, they have, if we build the infrastructure, they have committed to having the capacity to be able to service it. I have done some preliminary work in that I got the contact information and phone numbers for all of the individuals who were along that easement. And some of them have expressed concern about the water. Again, they would not be, we contacted the Corporation of Shepherdstown, and they confirmed that anyone who grants an easement would not be required to sign up for their water and sewer services. They could keep their own well there. So to your point, yes, ma'am, there is some, I don't want to say controversy, but there's pros and cons to everything. This is a high dollar pro-con discussion and situation. So
development that's going into next to Morgan's Grove.
Yeah.
They're doing the same thing that we were asked to do. We were told that in the meeting, that they are putting a line in at their cost, and they're gifting it over to the town as well. So yes, they will be on municipal water at that development as well, from what we've been told.
yeah. So, Ms. White, Mr. Jones, do you have something to add to that discussion?
No, I think I would just add that the school system is being treated as a developer in this case, whereas in other localities, the money would be given to the Water and Sewer Authority, so that they would have oversight and control over the design. So this is a little bit different type of situation than what we were anticipating.
Are you expecting us to vote tonight, or?
We did put this on for potential action. You are not required to vote tonight. When I had the discussion with Ms. White and Mr. Jones, given where we're at in the process, I believe, and you tell me, Mr. Jones, you felt like the latest we could have that decision in terms of moving forward was by the end of December. Is that accurate?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Mm-hmm. So we've given you that packet that you has every pipe, every dollar amount, water, sewer, ongoing cost, current cost, to the best of our estimates. From here moving forward, if there is additional information you'd like to have before making a decision, we can certainly have that. We just needed to get it in front of you for your discussion and thoughts.
I think it's maybe to find out how often they have to shut off the water, how many times are they told to boil water? I know the university, they often can't use the water. I don't know how frequent it is, but I think that is something to consider, the quality of what they're providing. Huh?
I can speak to that a little bit. If we're under boil water advisory, or Shepherdstown would be under boil water advisory, and the water was not potable at that school location, then we would have to bring in another water source, such as bottled water. And we would do that until they were no longer under advisory. So I don't know how often that happens, but that would be our response to that occurring.
So can I ask a question then? Are you conveying, if it is, since we're being treated as a developer, if they were to not have a potable water source, we would bear responsibility for making sure that there was potable water, correct?
That's correct.
Can I ask a quick question? Oh, sorry.
I was just going to ask, Shepherdstown Elementary and Shepherdstown Middle School, they're currently under city water, is that correct?
Correct.
So, I mean, we haven't had any huge issues about having bad water or anything like that. So that's really not an issue at this point. Right now, the issue is not just the cost of putting the line in ourselves, but also the liability. I mean, putting a water and septic or sewer system, that's really outside our wheelhouse. I mean,
well, we have to have a chief water operator, as we do at our other facilities that are not on public water and sewer, and that chief water operator must test the water daily, and it's the same occurrence. If the water couldn't, doesn't test correctly, then we bring bottled water into those facilities as well. Our chief water operator is retiring as of December, so that will be a service that it's lengthy to become a chief water operator. We've been searching, there's no one in the pipeline, so that will need to become a contracted service for the time being.
but I was referring to the $1.5 million, water project of creating the water line.
Yes.
So to your point, we do not have that expertise. In both cases, we will have to hire that out to someone else to engineer that. Yes.
And let's say we
Yes,
get,
that's correct.
$800,000 into it and something goes wrong, then we've got a lovely pipe in the ground that does nothing and we're back to square one.
Any one of a number of things could go very well or very badly. Yes, we own, and that's part of, as Mr. Jones said, part of the surprise of this was the Corporation of Shepherdstown taking a very different tack and in response to us than we had anticipated based on our architects' and engineers' previous experience. We would indeed own that until they approved it and we turned it over. So to your point, we own every inch of it, every bit of the process, all of the equipment, all of the liability, up until they inspect the whole thing, they turn the water on, and we hand over the keys and say, here you go.
And what if in the end they don't accept our gift?
I asked Mr. Jones that question. Would you like to tell her what you told me? Well, you're in a board meeting. Tell her what you told me, Mr. Jones.
Unfortunately, if they don't accept it, then school cannot open. That's the sad reality of the situation. So it's definitely, when they're treating the school system as a developer, they are placing all risk on the school division. So it's an unfortunate situation.
In your experience, Mr. Jones, you have not necessarily seen them do that, not them meaning Shepherdstown, but in other areas, you have obviously not seen this happen very often.
No.
And can you tell me, if we went with a system that was on our own property, what about the land needed? Do we have to have a leach field, drainage field? Like what else do we have to have to provide adequate sewer and water there?
We would definitely have to have a large drain field area, and ideally a place, a water source to actually discharge into, which we have not yet identified where that could be, but we would have to look into that.
What does Covenant Church do? They're right beside there. I mean, do they use the Shepherdstown?
No, they have to have their own system because it only comes out to Bon Air right now.
Okay.
That's the last development, right, before you get to Covenant?
Bon Air is the development right past the entry to what's the school out there?
Morgan Grove Academy?
Morgan Academy.
Okay.
Okay, it's
So-
right across the street from that entrance.
So Bon Air, there's Morgan's Grove, and from Morgan's Grove on is where there's no water. So Morgan's Grove has their own system too, I'm assuming, or they have Shepherdstown water?
I'm not sure.
The new development at Morgan Grove, is that what you're talking about? Because they're on different.
He's talking about Morgan Grove Academy.
Oh, it's not called Morgan Grove Academy. It's Morgan Academy.
Morgan
It's-
Academy.
Morgan
yeah.
Academy, thank you.
And
You know what I'm talking about?
I'm not sure whether they're on municipal water or whether they have their own system there.
Okay.
I just feel like it might help to talk to Covenant about how they did things and to get a water quality report, because even though the schools may have stayed open and given out water, there's been plenty of times when the citizens in downtown Shepherdstown were told not to drink the water. So I don't know how many times that is, but it's pretty frequent from my, experience. And that new building impact, I mean, how soon will the town of Shepherdstown be able to accommodate? I mean, they probably don't even know yet the impact that's going to have, that new development.
What's the difference in cost?
Yeah, the bottom line of difference in cost is $500,000.
Yes, sir.
Correct.
So
If we-
$500,000
if-
better?
If some unusual things don't happen, and there could be some unusual things that could cost us more in this whole process, either way, correctly?
Yes.
That's correct.
So who's paying for the splash park? That's $9,839, that I'm looking at, and whoever's paying for that,
So that is not what the engineers were saying is if you want this down here, that's not included in any of the estimates.
Right.
That is because again, we're trying to build this piece of land out for long-term. This is a legacy from the board. You have 256 acres of land. There will be school children for generations to be able to be on here. The Jefferson County Parks and Rec, we've been partnering with them to write some grants to get a destination playground for children with sensory disabilities. The splash park is not on that plan, right? So they're eventually, I would imagine that they will want to put restrooms out there. But then again, that's going to be a whole separate partnership. That will be away from the school. So none of this cost, but thank you, that was a good catch. They were simply saying, here are all the things that eventually you say are going to be out here. So think about that.
I think it's very difficult to make a decision on this tonight, and I think we need some time to think about this.
Okay. What additional information would you as a board like us to bring back so that you're prepared next time?
For me, I definitely would like to know, to solidify in my mind the difference in cost between doing both projects. I mean, I know it's going to be more than whatever we put on paper because everything is more right now. I'd like to know how exactly it's going to affect the plan. If we put water and sewer on site, what land are we going to lose, and is it going to change any of the schematics that we've already seen that we won't be able to do the same configuration because it's not going to test? And I'd like to know, do we have a water source on that property? Is it possible to even do it? How do we know that? Do we have to drill for water first? Do we have to test it to see that we can? I'm not quite sure what that process would look like.
Mr. Jones, how much would it cost to find that information out that she just asked for?
We would have to have a surveyor identify the closest water source and then just do some survey information. So I'm guessing less than $10,000 just to identify the closest water source.
I would like to know the quality of water that's at Covenant Baptist Church and their approximate flow rate that they have. That doesn't mean, I realize that doesn't mean we would hit that same vein and get that same flow rate, but still it would give us more of an idea of what's out there.
I think it's worth having a conversation with the pastor and, church leaders at Covenant as well, because, just to even let them know as a community partner, we're going to be next door. These are our options. These are the roadblocks that are being thrown up. And, if we put our own water source in here too, those types of things may or may not affect them long-term. If the Parks and Recs wanted to come in there and put something like that in, that may be something that they are interested in as well. And they also may have some insight or want to add to that, or maybe even look to build something that could be shared that would benefit them as well long-term.
Dr. Joy, do
Yeah.
I infer that one of the things, I don't want to speak for you, but it sounded like one of the things that you would like is for us to ask the Corporation of Shepherdstown, because I assume they have to maintain some report of any time the water hasn't been potable. So is that a piece of information that you would
Yeah,
like?
I think that's what Mr. Osborne was saying about the water quality, just kind of a report about the
Well,
water.
no,
I think he was talking about
I
on
was
site.
talking about the water
Oh, okay.
quality of
Right,
Covenant.
yeah, I think
and-
both would be helpful, so you can compare. And just like maybe a time frame of when they would be able to accommodate if, I don't know enough about that situation, but I know that with 64 homes going in and the greater impact on their, it sounds like a weak infrastructure, then it's even going to be more impactful. But maybe in 3 years, it will be solved. But as far as I know, every year they've had problems with the water. And
quality of water aside and cost aside and everything else aside, we have the issue of, the current landowners. And if they don't have a warm and fuzzy about us coming through and digging up their yards, I mean, how long could that process be? I mean, that could be a 3-year legal battle. I mean,
Well, in that case, you have a couple of choices. If you ask for an easement and someone refuses, number one, as I said, sometimes in the beginning, what happens is people see any organization coming through and they are like, oh, you have money, you have deep pockets, how much of it can I get? What are you going to give me? You can come across, but you need to pay me. Or if it is instead of going across your property, I'll go across the street and then go down and come back across. When I spoke with Mr. Jones, every one of those crossings is about $15,000 to add on to go, and you still have to get the easement from the person on the other side of the road, right? They part of the cost that even in that 2.1 million on the municipal was the engineering to be able to put both the sewer and the water on the same side of the road. Part of that was to try to reduce the number of easements that we'd have to obtain. And then absolute last choice, as you know, would be eminent domain, which has its own costly and time-consuming legal process. And
one of the problems we've run into is that is an old road. And so the width of the right-of-way is not as big as 480 and 45 because, no, not Gardner's Lane, but 230 is.
230.
230 is a very old road. In fact, the farm we bought was called the Red Pump Farm because there was a pump there where horses would water on the way to Harpers Ferry and Crosstown. And so that road has been there for many, many years, and so the right-of-way is not as large as most highways that we have out there. And so that has created some of this problem.
It sounds like it would really help to work with Covenant, because along the way they got water.
Yeah, they did, theirs is on site. They would, and again, if they chose, if we ran municipal water, they would have the option of hooking up to water and sewer themselves, as would anyone who was along that little lovely golden mile there.
How far into the process is that neighborhood, the developer of 64 homes? I mean, if they just started, or we have no idea?
They're moving dirt right now, and just moving a lot of dirt around and taking all the trees off and things of that such.
But as far as the easements and things like that, because the last project out in Shepherdstown, wasn't it NCTC that didn't go that route, and they just did their own because?
No, NCTC is on municipal water.
Oh, is it?
They weren't initially, but they are now, because we were told that they paid everything just like they're asking us, and they put the water lines in and then gifted it back to the water system.
So they set this precedent. Okay.
And there's fire hydrants all out Shepherd grade now because of that.
Well, it sounds like we're not going to be doing a vote this evening on it, so
Okay.
if you could put
I would
this on.
like to make a motion to table this to our next meeting. Not that we will, I would like it on the agenda of the next meeting, but I don't know for sure that we'll make a decision to our December meeting.
So I just want to, and thank you for that, because the issue is our next meeting is like right after Thanksgiving. So us trying to catch and talk to all of these people and get all of this when there's a closure next week might be tough. So, you know, we could put it on the agenda for then. I can't promise you that we'll have we'll be able to get all of this information over the Thanksgiving holiday for you. We'll do our best this week, but.
Correct, and we will probably just want an update, and we will try to maybe give some feedback on what our thoughts are with the information we have been given. But I think we need some time to digest this.
I agree, I second it.
Sure,
agree.
absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely.
So, I'm sorry, who seconded?
I did.
Thank you, Dr. Joy. Any other questions? All in favor of tabling the action on Shepherdstown Elementary infrastructure, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome, ma'am.
Next, we have action on easement request from the Corporation of Shepherdstown.
And in a stunning display of irony, in meeting with them to have a discussion about this and, quite frankly, register
Mayor Oxer.
a belief that I do not believe that Jefferson County Schools is a corporation, nor should it be treated as such, and the difficulties that imposes. In leaving that meeting, I was given a request from the Corporation of Shepherdstown to Jefferson County Schools requesting an easement from us. So essentially there is a project in which the Corporation of Shepherdstown is attempting to install a pedestrian trail, a sidewalk, and a bike path that runs along our fence line for Shepherdstown Middle School. And so they need a temporary construction easement in order to be able to place that there. Once the construction is completed, they would, it's not a permanent easement, it's simply one for them to do the work, and then it will revert back to us. You have a copy of the easement online and in front of you with the maps. Joyce and I went and looked at the map and looked at the space. We believe that based on what they've given us thus far, they would be able to complete the work without taking down any of the fencing that we have out there, which is important to us.
Well, the map's not legible, but hard to, but I understand, I know where that is.
Yes,
They've been
ma'am.
planning it for many years.
They have. And kids would be able to get out to that New Shepherdstown Library. You know, I don't know if they're going to put a crosswalk across there. Sir?
I think that would go as far as to get you to Morgan's Grove as well.
I think that the ultimate plan is to tie all those together. I don't know how far along they are.
All right. Is there a motion to grant the easement request from the Corporation of Shepherdstown?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Dr. Joy. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Osborne. Any other questions or discussion?
As much as part of me would like to say, not even no, but hell no, after the way that they're treating us, it's always about kids, and I will do what's right for kids.
I don't know
In
that
this
we didn't
situation.
vote on this several years ago, to be truthful with you.
We voted on easements before. But the only one that I can remember us being involved in, but you certainly have a lot more historical knowledge than I, was when we granted an easement for them to put in the gates for the ambulance. Remember, to get down into the fields on the other side.
Yeah, but I think they got this grant quite a while ago. And
I think I remember, you're right, I do.
and I'm not so sure
something.
we didn't vote on this, but this puts it on paper, yeah.
Which also tells you that if we have to do it again because they don't know what they're doing, that's a very good idea either.
All right, so there's a motion to grant the temporary construction easement, and it's permanent drainage easement. Is that going to have any effect as far as having standing water on our
When
property?
we went into, and you will note that, and Joyce and I had this discussion among many other, the grantee will relocate, repair, and restore any disturbance to the grantor's property to original or better condition. So.
My big concern was the fence, to be truthful with you. It's going to be awful tight to
Yeah,
get
I
that in
know.
between the road and the present fence,
I have no idea how they're going to do that.
but they say it's possible.
Well, it just reads permanent drainage easement. That's,
Yeah, I think I would want a little bit more clarity on the fact that because of the other situations we've had, that would be taken care of, and a little bit more clarity on the fact that if it looks like they're not going to move our fence, but we don't want to actually lose any more property there either. If they want to wait a few
Okay.
years, that's different.
Would
but-
you can certainly table this and ask them to come and present to you, to Dr. Joy's point, these maps are what they gave us. You can certainly ask them to come and present with some more clarity about both exactly how much space they're going to need, the width of that walking and biking trail, whether or not they, what will happen if they don't replace things to our satisfaction, and what their concept of this permanent drainage easement is to make sure that it matches what yours is and doesn't mean, oh, we're going to let the water run down into the Shepherdstown Middle School football field and just let you deal with it.
That can't be the permanent easement drainage spot. No, I agree. I think
So I
that might
make
be
a
a good
move that
idea.
we table this.
Second.
well, hang on, we already have a motion on the table.
Comments.
So,
So we want to amend it?
Dr. Joy, are you interested in amending your motion to table the easement request?
Okay.
And
Okay.
do we
And
make a request
Mr.
for that as
Osborne,
well?
I'm fine with that.
you're fine with adjusting it? Okay.
So can we do as Dr. Gibson learned just that, have them come and present to the board?
I work at the
exactly
will
what
and
it is they
pleasure of
want?
this board, ma'am, if that's what you.
Okay. So the motion on the table right now is to table the easement request from the Corporation of Shepherdstown. All in favor, say aye.
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 Oppose? All right, thank you. And I think if they come and, I think we're all in favor of the biking, walking trail, but we just need to make sure we understand how it's going to impact Shepherdstown Middle School.
Yes, ma'am. I will take that back to them, absolutely.
Thank you. All right. Next, we have board member comments and committee reports. Mrs. Bratton, do you have anything?
Yes. This coming Friday will be meeting with the Jefferson County.
Would you mind speaking into, thank you.
Jefferson County Parks and Recs meeting is this Friday coming, the 18th. So I will be attending that meeting. Also want to say congratulations to Jefferson High School's football team who actually won their first playoff game and is going to their second one to play this weekend coming. So I am representing Jefferson High School today.
Osborne?
I have a meeting Thursday with Epic. That's all I have.
I'm known as Ogden. Dr. Joy?
Cultural Unity and Diversity meeting this month. The next meeting is December 8th. I wanted to recognize all of our veterans. For last week was Veterans Day. Also wanted to bring attention to the fact that this is Native American Heritage Month. And I know that Mr. Jim Lawson was mentioned, but I just wanted to reiterate how he touched so many lives. I didn't know him, but I understand that he was an outstanding teacher and mentor. I wanted to congratulate Jefferson High School seniors Layla Parker and Elijah Dillow. Both are National Merit semifinalists. Jefferson FFA Ag Mechanics and Tech team placed silver at nationals. The conduct of chapter team won gold. Both the boys and girls cross-country teams won regionals, and the Jefferson High cheer team won regionals, and the cheer coach at Jefferson is the EPAC Coach of the Year, Destin EPAC. I also wanted to let people know that the Reimagine Scholarship applications are now available, and they can be found at reimaginescholarship.com. That's for students 9th through 12th grade. That's all.
Thank you. Dr. Gibson-Learn, did you have any comments this evening? All right. And then I believe we do have an executive session for a legal update with no action anticipated. Is that correct? Yes, ma'am. Is there a motion to go into executive session? Thank you, Mr. Osborne. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Ogden. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.